There are moments in an investigation when nothing is obviously wrong, but everything feels wrong. No broken windows, no signs of struggle, no witnesses, just a quiet house and a story that doesn't quite fit. Detectives call it a gut instinct, that small voice in the back of your mind whispering that something beneath the surface isn't right. And in the case of Emily Harper's disappearance, that instinct would lead detectives to a discovery far darker than anyone expected. Because what they eventually uncovered wasn't just a missing person case. It was something much worse. The call came in just before 8 a.m. on a quiet Tuesday morning. A man named Daniel Harper reported that his wife was missing. According to Daniel, Emily had left early that morning for her usual job, but she never came home. At first glance, it sounded like the kind of case police departments receive every week. Adults disappear. Sometimes they leave voluntarily. Sometimes they simply need time away. But when Detective Laura Bennett arrived at the Harper home, something immediately felt off. Daniel Harper stood waiting in the doorway, calm, composed, too composed. Most spouses in these situations are frantic, pacing, calling friends, demanding answers, but Daniel wasn't doing any of that. Instead, he spoke slowly, carefully, almost like he had rehearsed the conversation. And detectives noticed something else. He wasn't asking where Emily might be. He was explaining why she had disappeared. Inside the Harper home, everything looked spotless. The living room was perfectly arranged. The kitchen counters were immaculate. Even the trash can was empty. Detective Bennett had worked enough cases to recognize a familiar pattern. Homes connected to sudden disappearances rarely look this perfect, because panic leaves chaos. But this house looked curated, like someone had taken the time to make sure everything appeared normal. Detective Michael Carter, Bennett's partner, began asking routine questions. What time did Emily leave for her job? Daniel didn't hesitate. About 5 this morning. And she didn't take her phone? No. Or her purse? No. Detective Carter paused. Did she take her running shoes? Daniel blinked. Yes, of course. But when Carter walked into the bedroom, Emily's running shoes were sitting neatly beside the dresser, untouched. Detective Bennett moved slowly down the hallway, and that's when she noticed it. A faint scent in the air. Bleach, not overwhelming, but unmistakable. The kind of smell that lingers after someone tries to clean something thoroughly. She stepped into the bathroom. The sink was dry, the mirror spotless, but near the metal rim of the drain, there was a faint reddish discoloration, almost invisible, unless you knew where to look. Bennett stared at it for several seconds, then quietly called Carter. They didn't need to say much. Both detectives were thinking the same thing. Someone had tried to wash something away. While detectives searched inside the home, forensic officers began examining the garage. First, nothing seemed unusual, until one technician noticed something strange on the concrete floor. A patch that looked cleaner than the rest, almost as if it had been scrubbed aggressively. They sprayed luminol across the surface, and within seconds, the entire garage erupted in glowing blue patterns. Blood, large pools of it, and streaks across the floor, drag marks, leading toward the trunk of Daniel Harper's car. Back inside the house, Daniel Harper sat at the kitchen table. Detective Bennett placed a photograph in front of him. The glowing luminol patterns in the garage. Daniel stared at the image, and for the first time that day, his calm expression cracked. "Do you want to explain this?" Bennett asked. Daniel hesitated, then shrugged slightly. "I don't know what that is." Detective Carter leaned forward. "It's blood." Daniel swallowed. "You can't prove that." It was a small sentence, but investigators immediately noticed the wording. He didn't say the blood wasn't Emily's. He didn't say his wife was alive. He simply focused on the evidence, almost as if he had already prepared for that moment. Hours later, the lab confirmed what detectives already suspected. The blood in the garage belonged to Emily Harper. Investigators also discovered fibers in the trunk of Daniel's car, matching a blanket from the Harper bedroom. And underneath the trunk lining, a a single strand of long blonde hair, Emily's hair. At 5:14 p.m., Daniel Harper was placed under arrest. The charge: suspicion of homicide. But there was still one massive problem. Detectives had evidence of violence. They had blood. They had a suspicious husband. But they were missing the most critical piece: Emily Harper herself. Without a body, prosecuting a murder case becomes incredibly difficult. And Daniel Harper seemed to know that, because during the interrogation, he barely spoke. Instead, he just sat quietly, watching the detectives, almost like he believed the investigation had already reached its limit. Late that evening, Detective Carter brought new information into the briefing room. GPS data from Daniel's car, and one location immediately stood out: 3:12 a.m. Just hours before Daniel called police, his vehicle had driven to an abandoned industrial property on the edge of town. The car stayed there for 16 minutes, then returned home. Detective Bennett stared at the map. Her instincts returned instantly. "This is it," she said quietly. 2 hours later, a convoy of police vehicles rolled through the rusted gates of the abandoned property. The wind moved through broken warehouses. Floodlights illuminated empty concrete lots. Search teams spread across the area, flashlights sweeping across dirt and debris. Minutes passed. Then suddenly, an officer shouted, "Detective, over here!" Bennett and Carter rushed toward the voice. The officer pointed to the ground, a patch of soil that looked freshly disturbed, as if someone had recently dug there. Detective Carter grabbed a shovel and began digging. Each scoop of dirt increased the tension. Everyone on the scene knew what they might be about to find. After less than a minute, the shovel struck something soft. Carter knelt down and brushed away the dirt. A piece of fabric appeared. A blanket, the same pattern missing from the Harper bedroom. Detective Bennett's heart began racing. They had found Emily. But as Carter cleared away more soil, his expression suddenly changed. Confusion, then shock, then something worse. He looked up slowly. "Laura, this isn't Emily." Detective Bennett stepped closer. The flashlight beam revealed the face of the body buried in the ground. And in that moment, everything changed, because the body they had uncovered had been buried for far longer than Emily Harper had been missing, which meant one terrifying possibility. Emily Harper was not Daniel Harper's first victim. And somewhere out there, the truth about what Daniel Harper had really been hiding was still waiting to be discovered. When detectives began digging in the abandoned lot that night, they expected to find Emily Harper. Instead, they uncovered something far more disturbing: a body, but not Emily's. The woman buried beneath the dirt had been there for weeks, possibly months, which meant one terrifying possibility. If Daniel Harper had buried someone else there, then Emily might still be alive. Or worse, she might simply be the latest victim. And as detectives would soon discover, Daniel Harper's secrets went far deeper than anyone imagined. The body was carefully transported to the medical examiner's office just after midnight. Detective Laura Bennett stood in the observation room as the forensic team began their work. The victim was a woman, early 30s, blonde hair, severe trauma to the skull. But what caught Bennett's attention most was the condition of the body. This woman had not been buried recently. The decomposition told a different story. She had been in the ground for at least 2 months. Detective Michael Carter folded his arms. "So whoever she is," he said quietly, "she was killed long before Emily disappeared." Bennett nodded, which meant Daniel Harper's story wasn't just falling apart. It was collapsing completely. By morning, investigators had their first breakthrough. Fingerprints from the victim matched a missing persons report filed 10 weeks earlier. The woman's name was Hannah Cole, a 29-year-old freelance photographer. She had vanished after telling friends she was meeting someone for a photo project. Detective Bennett stared at the file. One detail immediately caught her attention: the last message Hannah had sent before disappearing. "Meeting a new client tonight. His name is Daniel." The room fell silent. Detective Carter slowly leaned back in his chair. "Well," he muttered, That's not a coincidence. Investigators began digging deeper into Daniel Harper's background, and what they found was unsettling. Daniel worked as a real estate photographer. He spent most of his time visiting empty houses, watching the clock. Detective Bennett entered first. Carter followed. She placed a photograph on the table, the recovered body. "We know who she is," Bennett said. Daniel looked down. His expression didn't change. "Hannah Cole. Still nothing." Carter leaned forward. "She disappeared after meeting you." Daniel finally spoke. "You can't prove that." Bennett studied him carefully. There was something deeply unsettling about the way he spoke. No panic, no anger, just cold calculation. "You buried her," Carter said. Daniel shrugged slightly. "That's your theory." Detective Bennett had seen this behavior before. Some suspects panicked. He already knew exactly what had happened to her. Later that afternoon, detectives returned to the Harper home with a full forensic team. If Daniel Harper had killed Hannah Cole, there was a strong chance more evidence remained inside the house. The basement quickly became the focus of attention. At first glance, it looked like a typical storage space. Boxes, old furniture, shelving, but one wall looked different. Newer, cleaner. Detective Carter tapped it. Hollow. Bennett's eyes narrowed. "Break it open." An officer swung a sledgehammer. The drywall cracked instantly. Dust filled the air. And behind the wall, they found something chilling. A hidden room. Small. Windowless. Bare concrete floor. A chair bolted to the ground. And chains attached to the wall. The room fell silent. No one needed to ask what it meant. This wasn't just a murder scene. It was a holding room. A place someone could be kept alive. But the most shocking detail came moments later. Detective Bennett stepped deeper into the hidden room. Her flashlight moved slowly across the floor. Then she froze. There were scratch marks on the concrete. Deep ones, as if someone had desperately tried to claw their way out. Carter noticed something else. Food wrappers, water bottles, recently used. Very recently, Bennett's pulse began to race. This room hadn't been abandoned. Someone had been here very recently. She turned toward Carter. "Emily," she whispered. But before anyone could say another word, a forensic officer ran down the basement stairs. "Detectives!" Bennett turned. "What is it?" The officer looked pale. "You need to see this." They followed him upstairs into the kitchen, where another investigator stood holding a phone. Emily Harper's phone. It had been hidden behind the refrigerator, powered off. But when the technician turned it back on, the last message Emily had sent appeared on the screen. Text message. Time-stamped 3:18 a.m. the night she disappeared. Just minutes after Daniel's car visited the abandoned property. The message had been sent to someone saved in her contacts as "help." But what froze Detective Bennett in place was the message itself. 3 words, typed in obvious panic. "He's not alone." The room went completely silent. Detective Carter looked up slowly. "If Daniel isn't alone," Bennett finished the sentence. "Then someone else helped him. And somewhere out there, that person might still be watching, still waiting, and possibly still hunting."